Hi there, and welcome back to the Caravan of Dreams here in Cornwall, where I'm talking to you about my late diagnosis, ADHD. I was diagnosed at 43 about 6 months ago after what I now understand to be quite a long and winding road of figuring out that all of the little quirks and idiosyncrasies, eccentricities that I've had, as well as my creative superpowers, energy, spontaneity, have all come under the umbrella of the diagnosis of ADHD. Some have been wonderful, some have been unmanageable, and I feel very relieved to have been diagnosed. We're having some seriously changeable weather here in the Caravan of Dreams. We've had just a huge rainstorm and it went really dark, and now it's brightening up again, so there could be overexposed light any moment, but we'll stick with it how it is. Bear with me. So you can find lots of details in the previous vlog, which will be attached backwards. Does that happen on YouTube? I don't know. And you'll find me talking about the history of ADHD in the UK a little bit, what might happen when you go to your doctor with a list of symptoms or problems that you think from your research might show that you could have ADHD, and you're seeking advice from the doctor about how do I get diagnosed, how do I get assessed even to see if a diagnosis might be appropriate. The content, the meat of last week's video was mostly around the 9 diagnostic criteria that come under the inattention umbrella. So today we're going to talk about the next set of diagnostic criteria. So there are 9 in the first set. As an adult, you need to have 5 of them to be diagnosed with ADHD. As a child, you need to show and be able to evidence 6 of them. The next set of questions that you're going to have to answer with detail and with explanation are all about hyperactivity and impulsivity. So the first section is all about inattentiveness, and the second section, hyperactivity and impulsivity. I will say that with all my reading and research that I've done around this topic, the kind of hyperactivity that you might see in boys, and I've seen in boys for years being a teacher, is, the tapping, the pen clicking with the lid, not being able to sit in their seat, fidgeting, rocking on their chair. Girls often internalise hyperactivity, and that manifests itself as overthinking, worrying, overanalyzing everything, internal panic, checking everything all the time that you've got what you need for homework or pens or pencils, constant narration inside your head. So the hyperactivity exists, but it's not so visible outside, which is why girls were diagnosed much less, and still are much less, than boys. At the top of the questionnaire, it asks you to choose the most appropriate rating that best describes how you have felt and conducted yourself in the previous couple of months. It then also says if you choose often or very often, and if you remember in the last video I did say you have to choose across the spectrum of rarely, never, sometimes, often, very often for these 9 symptomatic examples. Is symptomatic examples a word, a phrase? For these 9 criteria. If you choose often or very often, you have to give examples and explanations from childhood and then adulthood. Remember, 2 separate boxes. The first one is maybe the only one I think I chose sometimes on, so I didn't have to give any examples at all. And that question is, do you fidget or tap your hands and feet or squirm in your seat? So I don't externally fidget in a way that I would notice. I don't get up and leave my seat and walk around. I don't jiggle my knee or my leg that a lot of people do, or tap my fingers. So I put sometimes. Fine, you might have examples from childhood and adulthood for that one. Question 2. Do you often leave your seat when remaining seated is to be expected? So if I think back to my teaching days, in those fixed classroom environments where you have 30, 28, 30, 32 children sometimes, and you get some people who cannot stay in their seat. They're up, they're walking, they're any excuse to move around. Can you please sit down, please? Please, could you sit down? They can't help that. I do and have often kind of wanted to move out of meetings early. Some of my examples were that I would excuse myself to go to the bathroom a couple of times just because I needed to move my body. Not in a fidgety all the time way, just after a while sitting still or not moving my limbs became really uncomfortable, but I didn't notice or register what that actually was. So if you do leave your seat as a child in the classroom, or if you can't remain sitting cross-legged in a circle for very long, or you don't want to stay seated at a table for a really long time and you find reasons to get up, move around, take a breath of fresh air, make a cup of tea. Sometimes that can just be regular life, but if it interrupts some things that you should be doing and causes a problem, then it becomes a symptom if it comes under the umbrella of all the other ADHD symptoms that you might have. Question 3. Do you feel restless if you have to remain still? Quite similar to the last question, the last two questions really, this physical demonstration of hyperactivity or the urge to move. Yes, I also remembered that I often, even as a child and now, move my ankles a lot, rotate my ankles or rub my feet on each other in bed when I'm trying to sleep, or jiggle my ankles a little bit when I have to lie down in bed to go to sleep. Not all the time, but it's definitely something that I know that other people don't really do. So those were some of the examples I put, kind of niche though they are. You really have to think around the edges of how you behave, and lots of the time you behave in a certain way that you either mask from other people or that you just have as one of your own quirks and you never think about it because you assimilate it into your personality, but actually it doesn't necessarily belong to you. It might be a coping mechanism that you've had for so long for certain things. I don't really do those things since I've had medication. Question 4. Is it hard for you to take part in leisure activities quietly? This is where some of these questions were a red flag to me, because these are clearly all directed at external hyperactivity. Noisy boys or loud men who might be, shouting when playing football or hockey or rugby. So I think the idea that you can't do leisure activities quietly is maybe a slightly old-fashioned, narrow-minded way of trying to find a particular piece of data from a patient. So think carefully about that. I put rarely because I read books and I am quite capable of rowing a boat, sailing, running without constantly yelling or whooping. It doesn't mean I don't have ADHD. So I think that's an interesting question, and I think that might need revisiting potentially down the line. Question 5. Do you feel as if you are always on the go? For me, this was a massive, massive, massive issue. Yes, can never stop and relax. Never feel like I can just put my feet up and be. Always feeling like I've got something else, and don't understand why my diary keeps filling up when I keep trying to think. I just need a space to rest, to stop. And I just keep blocking my own path by pulling more things in for the excitement of planning things, or this feeling of being pushed towards doing stuff constantly. So I had a lot to write as a child and as an adult in this one. Again, it's the spectrum. Mine was very often. You know how I said question 5 was really me? I think question 6 might be even more peak Gail, because this one is, do you talk excessively? Oh, yeah, I do. But equally, narrow, isn't it? I also have hugely long periods where I'm almost mute, even when I'm around people, usually my nearest and dearest, because I don't feel comfortable being quiet around a lot of people because I'm often very excitable and fun and full of energy, and people can rely on me to hold conversations. So I mask a lot when I feel like I really don't want to be the one that's talking when I'm out with friends or socially, and I just pretend, and it's exhausting to do that. But I'd rather that, I think, than have people say, what's wrong? Are you okay? So when people don't see me, or I'm around the people I feel most comfortable with, family, close friends, partner, I can be very quiet and just dial it all down and turn it off. But I do get very excited and talk excessively. So I explain that about childhood and give examples of how that negatively impacts my life and in adult. Question 7 is, do you blurt out an answer before a question has been completed? This question links quite closely to talking excessively, I imagine. And it's not necessarily just about questions, is it? Potentially you finish people's sentences for them. Potentially that's a habit you don't even realise that you have, and people just let you do it and they don't notice it anymore. So sometimes you have to, as I said, peel a layer off of your awareness of yourself into a meta awareness of yourself, like thinking about your thinking, and that can take some time and be quite hard, so be prepared for that. Question 8. Do you have trouble waiting your turn? For whatever it might be, in the deli queue, when you were a kid, standing in line. So have a think about that one too. I chose often, not very often, and I explained that as feeling a little bit fizzy when I was a child, just the excitement of joining in. Not so much from my adulthood, because of course we learn manners and we learn self-control that control our impulses, but that can also cause stress and anxiety because we are going against what our brain is trying to tell us to do with the fizziness that we have inside, and we are controlling that. Finally, question 9 is, do you often interrupt or intrude on others? So for example, if people are playing games or butt into conversations, there's a social awareness aspect to that, I guess, but that's also to do with impulsivity. I don't think these questions are trying to evaluate the level of manners that you have or your level of social interaction awareness, how you were brought up or raised, etc. But I do think it's about just that you act before you've processed all of those lovely things you might have, manners, etc., that your brain just impetuously, impulsively causes you to blurt something out or interrupt or say the wrong thing. Once you have finished that question, that's all of those types of questions donezo. You might then have to go and take your pulse, right? Yes, that's your pulse, your blood pressure, pulse, weight, because those things will then be affected if you're medicated. They would be mindful about giving you stimulants if you have any heart issues or your blood pressure's not okay, or if you lose a lot of weight in titration. They'll also then ask you which areas of your life that you believe these symptoms are impacting the most, whether it's like work, education, relationships. There's one more thing. They will send very similar documents to these about the inattention, the hyperactivity and the impulsivity, those 18 in total questions. They will send those to somebody from your life that knew you as a child, or they will request that you send them. They won't send them. So whether it's a parent figure or a biological parent, a best friend from childhood who grew up with you, a teacher, a carer, anybody who can remember or evaluate these things in you as a child when you might not have had the metacognitive awareness to have seen those things in yourself, or you will have maybe seen them in a different way. That isn't a make or break. I don't think that if there isn't anybody in your life that can do that for you, that doesn't preclude you from being part of this assessment procedure, but it's just something that they will ask you to do. I asked my mum. She doesn't have such a depth knowledge, or didn't have at the time, she does now, of all of the research around ADHD and how these forms are structured, what they're trying to elicit from you, and that it's not clear what they're trying to evaluate. So she was quite linear and specific. Does Gail fidget and get out of her seat? Not really, no, because in front of my mum, I don't get up out of my seat and walk around a room. So I think a conversation is often quite useful to have with the person who's going to be filling them out for you, because when I explained to my mum what they might be trying to elicit, what the pattern of symptoms for ADHD are in adulthood and childhood, she was like, oh, I see. Okay, no, yes, I've got more to write now. I have more that I can say. So that's like the final piece of the puzzle of this pre-diagnostic setup. And then wait for your assessment with your psychiatrist, which for me was a really incredible experience. I was frightened. When I logged into that room and met her, she put me at my ease and asked me quite a lot of very interesting questions that I hadn't anticipated, but more on that in the next video. So as ever, if you have any questions, if you or a loved one or someone you know is going through this process of being diagnosed or thinking they might have ADHD and are wondering about this process, please feel free to drop any questions in the boxes below, or private message me through here or on gailmuller@gonehiking.com, my website. If you don't want to post something publicly, you can also find me on Instagram under the Gail Muller and message me there. I'm really supportive and happy to help in any way I can. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, if you found it useful, please remember to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell so that when the next video goes up, you're the first to know. I really appreciate your support, and I look forward to talking to you more in the next video. And I would also like to make a massive thank you and shout out to my patrons from Patreon, who very kindly support me monthly and allow me to have the time and the ability to make these videos, do all the research, set it all up, and to be able to edit and produce them with my amazing apprentice Em, and together we put these together and put them up online for you. So thank you very much, patrons. You're amazing. And if you're interested in Patreon and supporting me, you can start at £1 a month, and any contribution is hugely gratefully received. Okay, take care. See you in the next one. Bye. It's so bright, it's so bright. Why is it so bright? Appropriate. Distraction. Criteria. Symptoms. Anyway, moving on. Distracted by semantics. Question 3.